to Satsang. So wonderful to be together. And welcome to our family joining us from all over the world. So beautiful to have you with us and remind us of our ability to be together even when we're not in the same room. And starting with a question that comes in from our family, not present at the moment, but present in their own homes, in their own offices, or wherever they may be in their cities and countries. We start with a question they send in to remind them that even though they're not here physically, we know they're with us. And then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here has. I want to be positive and happy, but my parents are negative and verbally abusive. I know they are functioning from ego and are deluded, but it still hurts as they are my parents. I'm currently staying with them, and it is making me demotivated and upset about life in general. I am also their only child, so I cannot leave them. What do I do to keep me detached from the negative environment? One of the hardest relationships to navigate in this world is the relationship with our parents. We go from, as young children, believing that they are everything, that they're perfect. Not only perfect, but that they are infinite, that they are truly the divine on earth. And then as we grow, we start to see them with different issues they may have, different problems they may have. And it's always very interesting the moment that we realize our parents are actually human. And when we are older and struggling with issues from our childhood, issues of our parents, it's always very, very interesting and important to remember that in most cases, your parents were 20s when they had you. They're kids. They're kids, right? But as kids, they seem like everything. And so when they treat us in a certain way or tell us something, it's not just, oh, my mom or my dad said this. We take it really as truth. Now, in this case, the question asker is in kind of a double bind situation, because being with anyone who's always negative, even if they're not parents, even if it's a colleague, someone you share an office space with, or a roommate, or someone else you have to interact with on a daily basis, that's bad enough. Or a family member in the home, bad enough. But when it's your parents, it has that double-edged sword to it, because there's the energy of negativity that anyway grates on us, that anyway impacts us. And then, of course, there's the sense when they say things that even though, as a young adult, as this question asker is, or even as an older adult, Even when we can look at our parents and say, as she says, I know they're just functioning from ego and deluded. But nonetheless, when they're verbally abusive, and it's your parents, we take that in. Even when our mind says we shouldn't. Nonetheless, we take that in. And this is where it's really important to understand that when we talk about compassion, and we talk about loving kindness, and we talk about care, and we talk about seva, that you are not left out of humanity. So we teach compassion for all, loving kindness for all. There's beautiful meditation practices of getting in touch with compassion, with loving kindness, with giving it out to the world. You are included in that world. When we talk about in service, in seva of humanity, well, it's not humanity minus you. It's not serve all except yourself. Have compassion and love for all except for yourself. But we usually tend to think that. We've got these double standards that are not only incorrect, spiritually, psychologically, but that handicap us. To serve others is beautiful. Yes, we should serve as much as we can. But when it comes to taking care of ourselves, we feel like that's selfish. That we shouldn't. That we should only take care of others. And yet, if you look at all of the spiritual literature, it's all focused on your attention to yourself, your capital S self. Not the lowercase s self, not your ego. It's not my likes, my dislikes, my fears, my desires, my ego. But your capital S self, that truth of who you are. That divine within you. That perfection within you. And if we allow ourselves to be in situations where we are constantly being harmed, harm is not only physical, harm is emotional. And where we are constantly being harmed, the very nature of who we are is being pushed away, insulted, harmed. Well, we have a responsibility then to take care of our capital S self, right? Those of you who have been coming to satsang for a while or watch them know that in general my advice in relationship issues is always to figure it out. To choose peace, to choose love, to make it work. To recognize that you're carrying your own self with you, and whatever ego it is that's making this situation unlivable, well, it'll just make the next situation also unlivable. And yet, you'll know that there are certain circumstances in which I pretty much always say, the problem here is not you, the problem is the situation. And those are times of abuse. Physical, sexual, emotional. There are times in which the way to solve a situation is not to ask, how can I find peace in the midst of this? But rather to ask, how can I change this? It's the same thing that I've shared, it's a different subject, but the same idea, where when you look at, I was having a lot of this in America when President Trump was president and there was a lot going on in the country, and I would have a lot of people say to me, how do I find peace in the midst of this situation, in the midst of this oppressive situation? And my answer always was what the present moment is asking of us. And aside from political levels, we look at war across the world, we look at the environmental destruction, we look at climate change, we look at oppression of women, we look at starving children. Well, the solution to situations like that is not, how can I just find peace in the midst of all of this? But rather, how can I change that? I need to have enough peace that I'm able to go to sleep at night, get up in the morning and eat my food, have my focus and attention grounded and anchored so that I can be an instrument of the divine flow. And I need to, of course, be connected to that capital P perfection, that divine perfection, even in the midst of so much to be done in the world. But the peace that I experience is not the end. It's the means to the end. It's the means to be able to serve as that vehicle of the divine flow. Because if I'm not in peace, then I'm not a very effective instrument of peace. So, in this situation, similar to situations like environmental destruction and climate change and oppression, the answer is not simply, how do you find peace in a situation of abuse? But rather, how do you ground and anchor yourself in enough inner peace that you know, number one, regardless of what they say, it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change the perfection and divinity of you, even when it's your parents saying it. And you need to know that. Really, really, really know that. Not just with words like ego and delusion, but really know that it isn't true. And then you need, in that peace, in that grounding, to actually figure out how you're going to get out of that situation. Because that is not a healthy situation for you. If your parents both had contagious illnesses and you were immunosuppressed, no one would say, oh, the best thing you can do is stay in that house so that you can get sick and die. And that by leaving the house, you're somehow a bad son or daughter. We understand that in order to be an instrument of love, of peace in the world, I have to be alive, number one. I have to be healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I have to be free. Free from external oppression as well as from the games of my own mind. And this situation is a situation really of an externally oppressive situation. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that we abandon our parents, especially as the only child. I'm an only child as well. And yet, as a child, we have many dharmas. We all have many dharmas. We have a dharma as a child to our parents. If we're married, we have a dharma as a spouse to our spouse. If we have children, we have the dharma of being the parent to the children. We have our dharma in our livelihood. But we also have our dharma of waking up, of discovering and knowing who we are. Experiencing that, finding that, living that, manifesting that. Because it's not just an intellectual experience, an intellectual awareness. It's actually a blossoming and flowering of self. And so what you need to do is figure out a way that your parents can be taken care of. I don't know how old they are. I don't know what their situation is. But they can be taken care of in a way that isn't harming you. Maybe you want to begin by telling them simply how much it hurts you. Give them a chance. See if the situation can change. Sit them down. Maybe bring in a respected member of the community. Maybe a religious leader. Maybe a good friend of theirs who you trust. Bring in someone who can really help them understand how their way of being is harming you, and of course harming them as well. See if you can get them to change. Give it some time. But if not, then let's troubleshoot a way for them to be able to be cared for you to be able to fulfill your dharma as the child, and as a loving child, while not sacrificing your dharma to yourself. Because life should not be an either-or situation. It should be a yes-and situation. And it's not easy, but that's something that so many of us are called upon to navigate, is how do we navigate that? But it's something that we all need to figure out, because dharmas should never be either or. It should always be yes and. So try to see if you can get them to change. And then if not, let me know again. Reach back out and let's see if we can troubleshoot something else. Does anyone here have any questions? Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste.
I would love to ask you how to deal with inner anger, rage, and like violence that is present in us.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So, anger. You say inner anger, but of course all anger is inner. We may let it out outside. Right? It's like my food poisoning is inner, but if you're standing too close, I might throw up on you. But the food poisoning is still from the inside. So it's all inner, but we tend to sadly let it out on others. And yeah, sometimes it's rage. I can tell you, first of all, the way not to deal with it. And it's interesting because I have a background in Western psychology, where many, many schools of psychology are rooted in this idea that anger is something like food poisoning, where basically you just need to kind of throw up for a little while or diarrhea for a little while and clear yourself out, and then you are done. Drink some water, get a good night's sleep, and It's over. Unfortunately, anger isn't like that. And what a lot of those systems of psychology are rooted in is this idea of somehow we need to get it out. And what so many people have realized, and I've realized it as both a recipient of and a provider of, so on both sides, of this type of therapy, is it doesn't work. Yes, you feel much better in the moment. You feel lighter, there's a nice adrenaline rush, there's some endorphins going. You feel better. But you're no less likely to be angry next week. And in fact, interestingly, you're more likely. And in Indian culture and tradition, we speak about something called sanskaras, which the closest thing in the West that we use for that is, you could say, neural networks or neural programming. The way that our brains fire habitually, a habit that we have. What we now know is that the more temper tantrums you throw, the more likely you are to throw temper tantrums. The more times you punch a hole through the wall, the more likely you are to punch holes through walls. It's not like, oh, I did it once, now I'm done, thank God. But actually, every time you do that, it lays the sanskara for, oh, this is how I deal with anger. And in the future, until you have done that, the anger doesn't seem to subside. So instead, the way to deal with anger is, first of all, it sounds like it's something that you're really struggling with. I would identify it first. What's the source? Chances are it's going to be something in the past. Likely the root is going to be something from childhood. It just is that things that happen in the first 10, 15 years of our lives tend to impact us much more strongly in a fundamental way than things that happen after. There's a whole science around brain waves and brain formation that I won't go into, but just that tends to form the basis for a lot. But go back. When was the first time you remember being filled with rage? Ask yourself that. Because rage that he's asked about, it's different from the run-of-the-mill anger of like, somebody was rude to me and so I insulted them. Rage is different. Rage is the volcano that's bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and burning you on the inside until it actually erupts. And with rage, erupt it will. There's no option. Exactly when, exactly where, no one knows. But it will erupt. Unless, of course, you stuff it down with drugs or alcohol, which tend to be the solution that so many people go to with that type of rage. But of course, we know that doesn't work either. So, first of all, just try to understand yourself, that lowercase s self. Where did it come from? That's not going to cure it, but it's going to give you some insight. Oh yeah, I remember. And that'll give you some insight into a pattern. And then you'll get some insight into the sorts of things that make you angry, because they will all form that type of pattern. They'll all be kind of in line with whatever that initial real rage is. Then, Once you know that, and you start to become a little bit aware of your triggers, as you're moving through the world, you'll notice it as anger starts to come. This is the benefit of a meditation practice. Aside from, moving toward enlightenment, moving toward awakening, moving toward God realization, aside from that, aside from the destination, along the journey, as we become more and more mindful, you learn to do what Pujya Swamiji, my guru, calls grab the space. That space between the thought and the action. The thought arises of anger, and then it's going to bubble into yelling, into screaming, into punching, into acting out. And you start to find that space. And then you start to be able to see anger kind of coming at you from a distance. I'm about to get angry, and you feel it. You feel it kind of, it's like someone lit a fire under you. And the heat is sort of starting to rise. You start to feel kind of a compression in the chest. The vision becomes very narrow. And you notice it. And you start to notice it when it's still quite far away. So that's step 2, is being able to notice it before it's a wave that has crashed on you. And then step 3 is to recognize that it really just is a wave. Emotions, even rage, are waves. They're waves of energy. And if you've ever swum in the ocean, what you know is that the way to deal with waves is not to try to ignore them or outrun them. The way to deal with waves when it comes is either to allow yourself to kind of gently float up and then you gently float down. Or, as the wave comes, if you're on the wrong side of the wave where you're not going to be able to just go up with it, you're on the beach side of the wave, you dive down. You go deep and the wave crashes over you. And so when you notice it coming, just sit down. Just sit down. Sit on your hands if you have to. Close your eyes. Bring the awareness to your breath. Bring it very, very low. Low in the abdomen. Below your navel. Draw that awareness of the breath there. As slow and long breaths as you can. And just feel that wave rising. And it's okay, it's rising, it's just a wave. And just notice it. Keep breathing. Don't allow the mind to get into a drama around it. What the mind likes to do is to get into a drama. How dare he? I'll show her. Don't let the mind get into the drama. Keep the mind focused on the breath. And just allow that wave of emotion, that wave of energy to come. No drama, no lines, no history, no stories. Just the emotion. It'll rise, it'll rise, it'll rise, it'll rise, and it'll crash like a wave on the beach. And it'll go out. And you'll notice you're still sitting there, still breathing. And the wave is over. But in order to do that, you got to catch it while it's still at a bit of a distance. And that's where the meditative practice comes in. Because otherwise, by the time you know you're angry, you've already punched the wall. So you want to develop this practice of mindfulness. And don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't run from it. It's not dark. It's not bad. It's not evil. It's a very, very natural response when things happen in our lives, when we're young, that we're angry about. Anger's not the problem. The problem is that we allow it to take control of our hands and our legs and our mouth. If we allow it just to be there, it'll rise, it'll crash, and it'll go. And then what you'll find slowly, slowly is it loses its power over you. It loses its power, and then the farther out you're able to see it, then the next step is that you're able to stop it from that distance. You can see it, you can bow to it. Hi, anger, I see you coming. But you know what? I actually don't have time today. I've got something else on the agenda. Maybe next week. Give me a call on Saturday. And instead you engage in something full of love, whatever it may be. If you're walking down the street when it happens, find yourself a homeless person, buy him a hamburger, or a sandwich. Right? Buy him a burrito. Feed a homeless person. Buy him a sweater. If you're with someone you love, give them a hug. If they're the one you're angry at, give yourself a hug. Whatever you need to do. But do something in love, because that will dissipate that energy of anger. And it doesn't matter whether you are angry at person A and loving person C. The love for person C will counteract the anger at person A. The two energies can't exist simultaneously. And so you learn then to just shift the energy into love. Really, random homeless person. Give him a sandwich. Just that moment of love. It'll shift your energy entirely. Okay? Good. Yes. Yes. You. But you have to come up here with me. Yes.
I always wanted to go to America, so my BFF went. So now, how can I be thankful that I'm here? And
So, actually we should keep this because I'm going to ask you a question. We have two issues here. We have the issue of America and we have the issue of your best friend. Is the problem you're facing that you miss your best friend? Or is the problem that you're facing that she's gone to America and you wish you had gone to America?
I wish I'd gone to America.
If your BFF was here, would you still wish you'd gone to America?
Yes.
Okay. We've clarified the problem. Well, it's important. It's important to know what the real problem is before we address it. Do you know where I'm from? Take a guess. Do I look Indian?
America.
Right. Okay. So, I come from America. And where do I live now?
India.
India. And do you know why?
No.
Because I love India. And you know why? Okay. So, let me tell you a little bit about India. Are you cold?
No.
Okay. You were shivering, so that's why I was asking. Warm. So, America's a beautiful country in many ways. Very, very beautiful in many ways. And yet, it's a country where the culture, you understand culture?
Yes.
Okay. The culture is very much rooted in individual. I, me, mine. What I want, when I want it, how I want it. I need to be number one. I need to get the best. It's all about me. Everyone else can just figure it out for themselves. If someone else gets hurt while I am moving forward, so be it. Okay? It's a country very rooted in I. Now, the dilemma with that is, it doesn't actually make us very happy. You know, when I was growing up, I grew up in a world where people seemed to have everything. Lots of money, lots of opportunities, all of the fun things that you see on TV and the movies that make you think you want to go to America. Right?
Yes.
But you know what? You know what's really interesting? They weren't happy. Really? Otherwise, why would I have stayed in India? I mean, think about it. I came from America, but I stayed in India because people who had everything I found, all the opportunities, the money, all of these things, inside them they were not happy. They always felt like I need something more. So for example, let's say that your birthday list, you make a list of 50 things you want for your birthday. Or in America for Christmas. And let's say that you get 48 of the 50 items on your list. Well, that's a lot of nice presents, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know what most people I grew up would ask? What happened to the other 2 items? Uska kya hua? Ye jo 2 baki uska kya hua? Now, that's a very sad statement. Because we have everything, but we're focused on what we don't have. Now, you tell me, in your mind, what do you love so much that makes you want to go to America? What do you think life will be like different in America? Wait, sorry. Everyone should hear you. Yes.
Actually, I want to be an actress in America because I like American actors.
Ah, okay. So that sounds wonderful. That sounds really wonderful. I think you would be a great actress. But you know, you can start acting here as well. Because, see, in America, there's a lot of kids who want to be actors already. You probably know that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, if you start acting here, then you're probably more likely for somebody in America to see you doing something and to say, ah, her. We want her. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But I'll tell you something else, interestingly, about the actors and actresses in America. They are also not happy. Because I went to school with them. Not happy. Most of them, very large percentage of them, not all, but very large percentage, have problems with alcohol, problems with drugs, eating disorders. They're on their, 3rd or 4th or 5th marriage. Life is not very happy for many of them. So you should know that. But that doesn't mean that you can't be an actress. You can still become an actress. Is that really what you want to do?
Yes.
Okay. Well, great. I think that that sounds like a wonderful profession. But I think that you should start acting here. And then maybe some producer or director or casting agent will see you in a movie or in a commercial or on a TV show and will say, I want her. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
Unless you have some other plan? Well, let me ask you something. Let me ask you another plan. Let's say you went to America with your BFF, okay?
Okay.
Where is she now? Where in America?
Boise.
Boise, Idaho. You know how far that is from Hollywood?
No.
Really, really, really far. It's, I don't know, it's probably, what do you think, about 1,000, 1,500 miles or so? 1,000 miles? So you're looking at like 1,600 kilometers. How are you going to get from Boise to Hollywood? There are airplanes, I'm just teasing you. So let's say then you take an airplane from Boise to Los Angeles. And you arrive at the Los Angeles airport. How are you going to tell the whole world of Hollywood movies that you have arrived? You got a plan?
No.
Okay. So, that's okay. For right now, when you are here, you should be grateful. I understand not that your friend moved away. It's hard to be grateful for that. But you should be very grateful that you have a BFF, even if she happens to be across the world right now. Because at least you can talk on the phone and you can FaceTime and you can see her and keep talking. And you should be very grateful that you have so many opportunities here in India to learn acting or learn singing or learn all the things that you want to learn. And be very, very grateful to your beautiful parents for giving you opportunities. And be very grateful to God for giving you this very, very cute little body that can become an actress with such a cute little smile. Right? Be very grateful to God for that. And be very grateful that you come from a family in which you don't have to worry about where the food's going to come from or your jacket in winter, because most people who go into acting, you know how much money they make?
No.
0. 0.
Why?
Because they don't get any jobs. For every one acting job, there must be thousands and thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people who want it. So you know what most of them have to do to make money? They become waiters and they become waitresses. If you go to any restaurant in Los Angeles, the person who takes your order is an actor or an actress, putting food on the table. Does that sound like fun?
No.
Yeah. So, it's a beautiful demonstration of what we call planning. Planning means, okay, luckily by God's grace, I don't have to worry about putting food on the table because I have my wonderful mom and dad. And I have a wonderful opportunity here to learn lots of things. And I will try my best. But if I don't get an acting job, at least I still have food on the table and I have a jacket in wintertime. That's something very big to be grateful for. Don't you think?
Yes.
Yeah, because that would be really hard if you needed the acting job in order to eat. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
So I think you have a lot to be grateful for. What do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, right? But I still think that you should learn acting, try acting, start here. Okay? And then let's see. Let's see what's in God's plan. Okay? We have lots of people watching this online, so if anybody is a producer or director or casting director, you see this beautiful little face? Right? You ready to star in their next movie? Yeah? Smile. Okay. Go. Beautiful. Beautiful. We'll take yours as the last question. Yes. Yeah, the mic actually is so that it goes into the camera for those who are watching from online. Otherwise, they can't hear the questions.
So my question is two parts. First is, why do people have to go through circumstances which are not fault of their own? Like, for an example, people lose their parents at a very, very early age, right? For none of their fault, they have to grew up in certain situations wherein, they lack that security, they lack that guidance, they lack those sanskars, etc. So, which is not their fault. Okay.
Yeah.
And second question is, like, even you give everything, right? You give love, you give security to someone else, but in certain scenarios, what you might get is frustration, and maybe not a respectful behavior. So why?
Okay. So first of all, the situations that we go through come from one of three possibilities. Possibility number one is it's the fruit of the tree of the seeds that we planted. I plant an apple seed, therefore an apple tree grows. What I have to eat are apples. That's what we speak about in terms of karma, right? I do an action. That action bears fruit. That's the karmic fruit. It's not fault. It's important to realize that when we have situations arise, it's not the universe blaming you and saying, oh, this is your fault. Having apples, you wouldn't say they're my fault, but they're certainly the result of actions that I've done. But the universe does not see good or bad. The universe isn't saying, oh, apple trees are bad, but orange trees are good. I may prefer oranges and be very upset with an apple tree. But in the universe's perspective, it's just apples and oranges. I happen to plant an apple seed, so I've got apples. It's not that the universe is punishing me for planting the apple seed. I'm simply receiving the fruit of what I have planted in this life, in previous lives. So that's one way that situations arise in our life. Another way, and they're connected, of course, they're not separate, but another way is a situation arises in order for something else to arise. I've been given an experience because in that experience there is a lesson, there is an opportunity that I am supposed to learn, that I am supposed to go through. And if we don't learn it, you'll find you keep getting those situations over and over, and then you wonder, why does it keep happening to me? When the real question is, what is the lesson in there that I'm not learning that is making the universe continue to send me the same opportunities over and over and over again? right? It's like if you don't learn long division, they're not going to let you go from 5th grade to 6th grade. You've got to learn it. It's not that you're bad, it's not that you're wrong, it's not that you're being punished. But the school knows if you don't learn how to do long division, you are going to be lost when they start doing algebra, then trigonometry, then calculus, that you'll totally fall behind. So they're going to hold you back at a young age until you learn your proper long division. And you get to keep doing 5th grade over and over again until you learn it. Maybe you decide, okay, enough. Give me a tutor. Give me someone who will sit me down and teach me this stuff so I can get through it. That's what leads a lot of people finally to go and find a guru. They feel stuck. And they don't know the way out. We find somebody who says, aha. And that ignorance gets removed. The light gets shown. And then we're able to walk in that light. So those are 2 ways that things happen. The third is what I would call simply nature. Meaning, it was my birthday, I planned a picnic, it rained. I don't believe that the universe is giving me fruit of something I've done and that's why it rained on my birthday. Or that people who were born in rainy seasons and therefore don't get to have birthdays in the park or somehow, getting some kind of negative karmic fruit. I think it's just nature. So I think sometimes things happen just because they happen. It's nature. You're working on the computer, you're in the middle of doing something, you're done great work. Electricity goes out, computer shuts down, you lose it. I wouldn't necessarily rack your brains trying to figure out what the lesson was other than save your work or, what karmic fruit I'm getting. Sometimes things do happen just because it's what's happened. But most things fall in the first and the second category. So if you're in a situation that is troublesome, instead of asking about fault, ask 2 questions. Number 1, what seeds may I have planted that have borne fruit like this? Not so you can blame yourself, but simply so you can be sure not to plant those seeds again in the future. The second question to ask yourself is, what am I supposed to be learning from this? How am I supposed to be using this experience to grow, to blossom, to transform? Those are the 2 questions to ask. Because every opportunity is for that, it's for growth. There's no scripture or even commentary on a scripture or sage or saint or rishi, whoever said, be a nice person and everything will always go your way. Nothing you don't want to happen will ever happen. Nobody ever promised us that. We're not even promised by God, come to me, pray to me, worship me, and you'll never be in difficult situations. You'll never have challenges. You'll never get fired from your job. You'll never get left by anyone. Everyone will love you. Everyone will appreciate you. We've never been promised that. There's no spiritual law, natural law that says that. So don't ask questions that aren't actually relevant to the situation, because then you just get stuck in the jail of your own mind, asking questions that have no answers. Ask, what seeds did I plant? Because it's a very good question for insight, and it's a very good question for future planning. And ask, how am I supposed to blossom through this? How am I supposed to expand, to grow, to change, to transform? See these situations as opportunities, rather than just, oh my God, I'm stuck and it's not my fault. And in terms of your second question, in terms of a relationship of loving and giving and then getting not such nice response back, this is where it's really important to realize that everyone has got their own karmic package that they're in this life with. And even though you may be the one who has spoken the words or done the action, and maybe your words were loving and kind, and the action was loving and kind, but what that person is responding to or reacting to is not just your words or actions. They're reacting to their whole life, their whole karmic package. Their fear, their ego, their confusion, their pain, their grudges. And so it's always a difficult situation to be in, but it's important to realize everyone's got their own karmic package. And unfortunately, sometimes what you get is the result of someone else's karmic package. And that's where, if it's an important relationship, a close relationship, to say, how can I best respond in this situation with this person's karma? And that becomes the lesson to learn. Because slowly they'll work through that, hopefully. Karma's not fixed and stuck. It's constantly changing. Right? I go through one karmic situation, then another karmic situation. But do check yourself also. Is there some way that you are triggering someone else's karmic baggage? And see, especially if it's a relationship that you want to hold on to. In those cases, my prescription is always choose love. Whatever the person is doing, whatever they're saying, however they're acting, you have the power to choose love. It may not necessarily impact them, but at least it will impact you. At least then you are living in love rather than in anger. Someone else's bad mood shouldn't have the ability to steal your love. If they're in a bad mood, okay, let them be in a bad mood. They're cranky, fine, let them be cranky. But why should that have the ability to steal who you are, which is a being of love, a being of truth, a divine being? Why should you act any other way just because somebody else is in a karmic moment of ignorance or ego or fear or anger? So keep choosing love in yourself, with yourself. And you'll see it will change a lot of the world. But at least in the meantime, it'll change your inner situation. And that's something you do have control over. Great. We'll start with you tomorrow. Kalapse shuru karenge. Wonderful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. Beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world. And so much love to you all.